Grand Rising, Seekers of Truth and Arcane Knowledge. I'm your Brother Magh. I was inspired to tell you a story. First, to understand the story, you must understand the language I speak. So, I'm going to be telling you a story of a hero. Although he carried the surname of his baneful fathers, he spoke of peace, he spoke of heaven, he spoke of light, he spoke of nirvana. When the ones and zeros finally grew from the ground and separated from the land, we shall call that the time of the great towers, or the great T's. So, from the ones and zeros arose the two T's. Now in these two T's, there was depression, sadness, there was separation, because we had grown apart from the world, we had grown apart from our families, we had grown apart from the earth. We had given up our purposes for a grander vision, a vision of hope and unity, aspiring. So in the two T's, and in this Great Depression, the oppressors saw that there was an opportunity to take control, because in the separation of the T's, of the towers, and the people of the land, they could oppress their confusion. And now, even though there was depression, it was Great Depression, there was excitement, because there was new possibilities coming across. The great T's would bring prosperity, so they would erect more T's. The three T's, when the third T was erected, the oppressors sought to control by artificially vacuuming out independent wealth. However, that didn't work, because even in the greatest of depressions, the spirit was still there, the excitement was still there. People recognized what the T's represented, what the giant cities, skyscrapers, and concrete antennas, they saw what the possibilities were there. So even in the time of the four T's, when they erected the fourth T, there was still depression, there was war. There was war across the globe. But in war comes unity. War comes brothership, and war comes camaraderie. Except, before this time, man had invented the telegram. Sound could travel for long distances. Voices could travel for long distances. And at one point, they figured out that they could use these telegrams to television. So then they sought to tell the nation a vision of warnings in case war was to come home. Now, the oppressors sought opportunity through these telegrams, through these televisions, and the Medes had stepped forward. The Medes in the Dark Ages were sorcerers. They cast magic over kingdoms. They were the rise and fall of the oracles of Delphi. The Medes ever so present, decided to use the telegram to television and program the most susceptible of people, children. So, when the fifth T was erected, and the number 5 is the number of change, is the number of challenge, it's the number of rebellion. Without personal wealth, oppressors thought that they could control the population, but they couldn't, because born from that was personal freedom. This personal rebellion was a voice, a recognition that a voice would be enough. In fact, so much so that they found a way to record a voice and broadcast it through the air for everyone to hear. Of course, the Medes didn't like this. The Medes sought control, so they partnered with the oppressors. But it didn't stop the spirit of freedom. It didn't stop the spirit of love, because 3, the 6, and the 9 are the Holy Trinity. So when the 6th T was erected, the 6th T was the middle ground. The middle chakra is the heart. So the 6th T brought love, compassion, even in times of war. In fact, it did so much so that it rang through eternity. And even now we celebrate the 6th T, the rising of the 6th T, with bright colors, washed colors, flowers, doves, peace, love. And then became the time of the 7th T. When the 7th T was erected, 7 is the number of choices. So, when the 7th T became available and the power of the 7th T rang through the land, through all the unions, the oppressors couldn't have this. The oppressors did not like this. The oppressors did not like their plans being exposed to the general public. So the oppressors used a magic bullet to kill the voice of freedom. The young king who would set people free, who would warn the world of the institutions that would bank on your slavery. They killed him, dead, in front of their kingdom. The young king struck down in front of the entire kingdom. Plain sight. That's how much they wanted to show their power. And they did. That was fear. And in that fear, people allowed control to be taken by tyrants who were manipulated and controlled and backed by the oppressors themselves. You following along yet? Good. So, in an attempt then to make everybody forget about the show of power that happened in this magic, Medes then decided to employ one of their most deadly covert agents. It was a vessel that was empty. This vessel we'll call V. This empty V was an assassin. He was there to poison the minds of the children through entertainment, of course, in a joyful way, because when you fill the body with artificial things with grime and dirt, rocks. They may be pop rocks, but these things do not nourish. And although they feel satisfying, although they feel gratifying, they do not nourish. So the Meads, with their MTV, they even created an MTV Junior for the younger kids. If we all would have known, right? So this vessel, this V, this empty V, was channeling. It was a channel. It was directly a channel. It was a channel through a telegram that told a vision through the channel of their programming, so they could program the minds of young ones, stimulate them, gratify them, stuff them full of things that seem filling, seem satisfying. They were not nourishing. It was poison. It was filling our vessels so that the light could not come in. Because the more you fill the vessel with dirt and grime and rocks and grunginess, you get the light in there. It's hard, almost difficult to get the light in there. So they artificially pumped the 8th T filled with celebration. Celebration of what? Well, there was mass wealth being built. There wasn't independent wealth, but there was mass wealth. See, because back in the time of the 5T, they had found a way to sell and monetize everyone's dreams. All the Americans were sold a dream that was encapsulated by a fence. Now, don't get me wrong, this white fence looked inviting. There was the love of your family, there was the love of children and your animals, but it was all encapsulated in a nice little fence. Make sure they knew where you were. And people bought that white fence. People bought that white fence all the way up to the 8th T. And the 8th T, with all the rocks and all the glam and all the sparkles and all the fun, nobody noticed what would come, because the oppressors knew that the 9 would be transformative. 9 is the last of the Holy Trinity. It is the highest before you reach the 12. So, the time of the 9T, within the 9 T's, they tried to circumvent an awakening that was destined for us by poisoning the people with drugs, poisoning the people with violence. So in a time where there should be prosperity, in the time of the 9 T's, it was the Mead's job to pollute the airwaves with soot, debris, grime, crime, murder, drugs. And they glorified it with their vessels, with their empty vessels, their MTVs. They glorified it, made it easy to buy. So, this, however, was a special duty, a special job, because they knew that the Grand Awakening would not happen during the time of the 9 T's. It was the beginning, it was the setting of the stage, but it was not the time of the Grand Awakening. So their attempt to prevent this from happening, their poisoning, they needed something powerful. They needed a symbol. They needed a mascot. So they chose a man. A man who was so riddled with pain, so riddled with anger, so riddled with the spirit of teen angst that even carried the surname of his baneful fathers, who cohabitated their banes, their banefulness. And even though he was a curt lad, the oppressors thought, this is the one, this is the man who will embody our message of anger. So much so that they changed his name to Grunge. They called him Grunge. Everything he did was grunge. And they sold grunge to the kids. They sold grunge in the airwaves. However, this man, unbeknownst to all these people, because the oppressors don't see art for what it is. They saw this angry young man yelling obscenities, and they thought, that is the fella that we need to spokesperson our pain, the pain of what it is to be in the 9T. So, what they did not realize was this man transmuted his pain. And they thought, just because in the time of the 8 T's, the spokespeople of that period were very, very influenced and corrupt by money, drugs, and they were easily manipulated. However, this baneful, this curt steward of the heavens, peace of nirvana, he transmuted that pain through his art, through his pain, through his music, and his message. Even though the music sounded of grime and dirt, it was not grime and dirt. It was nourishing, because he created this grime and dirt through his shadow. So even though it looked like grime and dirt, they fed it to the audience. They fed it to the masses. And it healed. It had the opposite effect that they thought it would have, because in a time where everything is so convoluted and watered down with drugs and sex over the television gram, and programming in the channels of these magic meads. They were everywhere. You understand? They were everywhere. They tried to make everything gray. Everything was black and white and gray and lustful. That was they tried to make it the look of the 90s. It was an attempt to beautify something grotesque, because it was easier to swallow that way. Now, here's the funny part. The Medes took their soldier, their 9, their vessel, their MTV, and they said, you know what, we need you to beautify this music. We need you to beautify this grime, this grunge. We have gardens of sound. And these women in chains, even though it was a wonderland, they bound these women in chains, and they grew their gardens of sound. And they said, you know what? Let's try to sell this in a different way. Let's try to take this grime, because they knew the grime wasn't affecting everybody. The grunge had not pierced the mind of all people, just a large population of it. So in an attempt to beautify this grunge, we decided to call it Unplugged. Now, this was a mistake, because you can awaken. You can awaken and still be dependent. You can awaken and still be completely and utterly dependent on the Matrix, because to awaken in the Matrix is not to escape the Matrix. You must unplug the Matrix to escape the Matrix. So these sessions that they attempted to create to beautify this grunge, not realizing that the magic of the music was healing in itself, in and of itself, created these magic sessions, unplugged beauty, that became the defining point at the time of the 90s. They didn't realize it then, and of course they quickly saw it once they realized it. You never heard these unplugged sessions again. In fact, you gotta dig for them to find them. Here we are in the time of the Grand Awakening. Teas have been long gone, taken by the sands, drowned in the sands. The twin teas did arise. There was a time of awakening. The mass awakening, the grand awakening, the grand enlightening, because their attempt to create an army of woke people inside the Matrix, specifically to battle children of light that were coming here to enlighten the rest of humanity. This was their game plan. You can be awoken inside the Matrix. You can be aware inside the Matrix. And those are the dangerous people, because the ones that are aware of their dependence on the Matrix will fight for the connection to the Matrix. You must unplug from the Matrix. You can still rely on the Matrix. You can still utilize the Matrix, but if you are unplugged, you are not dependent on the Matrix. Feel me? Because the difference between Hitler and Gandhi is Hitler was awakened, and Gandhi was enlightened. So, let that light in. Follow the hero of Nirvana. Well, I almost didn't get to the struggle, actually, because they did attempt to use the ones that would court from the knees and the heart, the ones who would growl and revel in the anger, would sacrifice this curt young man. They try to make it look like he would take his life through sadness in order to try to manipulate people into thinking that the grunge was bad. It wasn't bad. He was sacrificed to the Medes so that the ones who courted on their knees and the ones who would growl in the aftermath could sell you more crap to fill yourself with, so that you will not seek the light. As long as you're being gratified, as long as you're being filled, don't need the light, right? In a time where we seek enlightenment in the great enlightening, remember, be mindful, be purposeful, love,